the walk and not run. Walk and not run. That's my philosophy.
Do run.
You are listening to Saints in the South.
All right, welcome everyone. This is season 2, episode 84. We are Saints in the South, representing saints everywhere, and we are your source for gospel growth and good times. I'd mentioned last week that we were having to move some things around and so forth. We got work changes, school changes, and everything, and so we have done just that. Some of you have reached out asking where the star of the show has been, and we've got her back.
That's right.
Heidi Simpson.
No.
Yep.
That's
Is
right.
that my mom?
Yep. So, well, hey, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast platform, go ahead and hit those subscribe buttons and be sure to leave some reviews and ratings. Speaking of comments, we have a recent comment from handler News with a Twist Tri-Cities. Heck of a handler name.
Okay.
Says, I am truly grateful that I was led to your channel. Your sharing is my gift. Thanks so much.
So nice.
Pretty
That's
awesome.
nice.
Yep. Thank you. Appreciate that very much.
We do. We really appreciate that stuff. That's what keeps us going.
That's right. Hey, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at Saints in the South. And you can also check out our website, saintsinthesouth.com.
Mm-hmm.
So this week we are in sections 89 to 92. The title of it is A Principle with Promise. So it is it's early in the year 1833.
Yes.
And Joseph Smith and the brethren, they have established the school of prophets as instructed by the Lord. They are meeting upstairs in the Newell K. Whitney store. And as custom for the time, the men are in the meetings and they're also smoking and chewing tobacco.
Right.
And probably sipping on some good old tea and coffee and
Hot sweet tea.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Some good old sweet tea with a little bit of lemon drop in there.
Right.
Well, Emma and other women would go in afterwards to clean up, and she had some issues with this, cleaning up the mess and being
Skull
all foggy in
cans.
there. Skull, that's
I'm
right.
sure
Cody-
it's
Kodiak
so
cans.
gross.
Yeah.
When I
Yeah.
see a dip cup just
Yeah.
in public,
Right.
I
you,
can't help but like gag a little.
you can't work at the railroad then.
Oh,
ever.
well,
You
shoot.
walk up into a
Oh, golly.
you walk up into a locomotive and there's just the white styrofoam cups everywhere.
That's right. Right.
Just-
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I bet they
Walking
hate
around.
y'all dental insurance
oh,
wise.
no,
Not you, Marcus,
no,
necessarily.
I'm perfect in my teeth.
I mean, that many people. I mean, that's a lot of
Yeah,
dental work.
it's
For
bad.
sure.
It's like, I mean, smoking's bad enough, but the dip and stuff, that's the chewing tobacco, that's just really
Teeth and
nasty.
everything.
It's just really nasty. I'm sorry.
Come on.
I'm not trying to offend anybody, but I'm just saying I don't care for it. So neither does the Lord, as we'll see here.
That's right.
Um,
So Emma, she has an issue with this, kind of getting tired of having to go in and clean up after these men, and so she approaches Joseph with some complaints and says, "Hey, I think we need to do something here."
Yeah.
And to Joseph's credit, he listens to his wife and he goes and inquires of the Lord more about the matter and everything.
well,
So-
he'd be standing there in that cloud of smoke too. He couldn't
Right.
even. I think they even mentioned that it was even. Well, it shows the room. The room's not much bigger than
Right.
this room,
right.
and they said when you got, what was it? How many men were in there? I forgot.
A bunch.
A bunch.
It's a solid
And-
number.
Yeah, most, I'd say 95% were smoking pipes, and it was like the whole room just clouded up, and it was,
Right.
And I bet for a lot of them, it wasn't a big deal because they were used to it.
Yeah,
That's
it was
what
just-
they were used
it was
to.
a normal thing.
But how inconsiderate for the person cleaning up,
Right.
Yeah.
right?
I want to
I
think of
doubt
it.
Emma had a pipe.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Maybe. I don't know.
I feel like for most of these guys, it was like chewing bubble gum or something. I mean, it was just
Just a
something you
habit they
did.
don't
You
notice.
just,
Yeah.
it wasn't, and you didn't think about health issues. It wasn't anything about your health. It was just about status or about sophistication or whatever you want to call it. It was whatever. I can't think of the word, but it was part
Addiction.
of what addiction, which they didn't even realize probably,
Right.
and so, yeah, there was no accompanied health issues with
Right.
this stuff,
Right.
until now, I guess it basically where it's called out pretty much publicly, at this point.
Yep. Yeah, the revelation ends up being kind of ahead of its time.
Right.
Although in doing the read and everything, there were kind of some instances where they had started people had started abstaining from alcohol and things like that.
Yeah, and they were
Temperance
it wasn't real
movement
prevalent.
gaining
though.
traction.
right.
Yeah.
People were starting to recognize that that can't be good for you.
Right.
Just got to be something better. So
Just to give some extra credit to Joseph here, So when I was called as bishop, state president, President McDonald, some of his counsel to me was to share things with my wife and to listen to her input and get her input on different situations, obviously leading out details and so forth.
Yeah, right.
But giving her situations, scenarios, and asking for her input and guidance and everything and so forth. So, and I did that. That's actually one thing that I actually wish I would have done more.
But I appreciate that you say that, because it means so much to me when Thomas, my husband, wants to counsel with me.
Yes.
I love that. Like,
Yes.
I don't know what he does at work, because I don't do that.
Right.
But when he says, what do you think of this or this? That means so much to me, because he values my opinion.
Yeah.
He thinks I'm smart enough to at least give feedback. And I don't know, that means, I don't know if that's a love language, because I've never read that book, but words of affirmation is apparently my thing.
Right.
But also the fact that you have a spouse that values your opinion to consult with you.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's listening. I would thank you, Thomas, for the time to do that, because it makes me feel so much that we're on the same page. We're partnerships. We're helpmeets to each other.
Yeah. I literally feel that way too with callings that I've had. I feel the necessity, the need to speak with my wife about things like this is happening. Like, what do you think? What do you think about this situation or this? Just like you're saying. And it's just like it's almost like it's not an option. Does that make sense? To me is what it feels like. It's like, of course you would ask her. I think of a Heavenly Father. We have a Heavenly Mother. I can promise you that Heavenly Father is not doing everything by himself. I guarantee you he goes to her and consults with her and says, you know what, it's both their children. We're both of their children.
That's
right.
right.
Well, also, sorry, go ahead.
No.
Whenever I'm like exceedingly mad at something and I share it with Thomas, he's a great sounding board for me to get it out. And then he can be like, well, what are you actually going to do now? Now that you have had the emotional response. And it always annoys me. Like, I'm always like, it drives me nuts when he does it, but he's right. He's like, okay, now that you've gotten that out, what's the actual thing you're going to do? And I like having a person who doesn't hold my emotional response against me. Right. He's just like, I'm here so that you can feel things, but now you need to navigate clearly.
Exactly.
And I'm sure Emma, I don't know, I won't speak for Emma, but I'm sure she didn't go up to Joseph and say, let's pray about the tobacco situation. She's probably like, I'm sick of your friends making a mess.
Exactly.
Right?
That's the way I play it in my head.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
I mean, and why not?
That's right. That's right.
I mean, that's the way it was. And so, I love that.
If I was Emma, I would have been like, you're now cleaning it. And maybe that is the catalyst for prayer for revelation.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So verse 2, to be sent, greeting, not by commandment or constraint, but by revelation and the word of wisdom, showing forth the order and will of God and the temporal salvation of all saints in the last days. So, it come by as not a commandment in the beginning. And for many, many years, again, it was a word of wisdom. It was principle, right? It was something that was
a gift
suggested, recommended.
So if you notice, the word of wisdom is highlighted here. Word of wisdom is a gift of the Spirit. And if you click on word of wisdom, 1 Corinthians talks about the gifts of the Spirit. It says, for to one is given the spirit of the word of wisdom, to another the word of knowledge by the same Spirit, et cetera, et cetera. But this is a gift of the Spirit, word of wisdom. In other words of wisdom, it's something that when these things are revealed, you will, if you're in that right spirit, it will make complete sense to you. Right. And so this is the Lord saying, and he's introducing this as saying, this is something I want to put out there. And this is by revelation and the word of wisdom. Right. So here's the revelation. Through the gift that you have of wisdom, you will understand this and you'll accept this as something that you see very important. Right. In other words, this is not going to be a commandment right now. This is going to be something where you need to mull over this a little bit and really think about it. And we do find out in the history that it was pretty immediate. They were like, you know what, pipe, trash, they threw it in.
They burned it.
Yeah, they burned it in the fireplace. They
very
threw it away.
Symbolic.
So it was like that spirit was pretty strong. I can promise you it was very strong in that moment. And then the smoke cleared, right? I mean, it's like, whoa, it's clear.
some people, like you said, strictly lived by this, and others chose kind of to,
they got there when they got there. Because I think about the
right.
saints that crossed the plains. A lot of them had coffee and tea in their wagons. And
that's right.
You know what? They're starving to death and freezing to death. So I won't be in that line to judge.
Right. So did y'all read some of the history on Joseph Smith?
I did read the one where when they left, was it Liberty Jail or Liberty Jail they left or something, or when they escaped from one of the jails or got out of one of the jails, they stopped by a farm or something.
Well, so I'll read here from the history. It says, perhaps the best illustration of a more relaxed position regarding the word of wisdom in times of stress is John Taylor's account of events leading to Joseph Smith's death at Carthage in June of 1844, says, in which he noted that Joseph Smith and his companions, who were feeling unusually dull and languid, after several days of incarceration, they drank some wine to raise their spirits. That was one example. Another example is, by the Nauvoo era, Joseph Smith was more frequently making exceptions to the general observance of the word of wisdom that were not linked with health issues, hardship, or sacred functions, possibly indicating a more relaxed attitude on his part toward things like tea and wine. In Joseph Smith's personal journal, 1843, indicates that he had tea with his breakfast. And then 2 months later, in May 1843, he drank a glass of wine with Sister Richards of her mother's make in England. And then finally, a year after that, Joseph Smith drank a glass of beer at Moyser's.
How come he got to do all that stuff, man? No, I'm just kidding.
It's just, anyway, it was, and again, well, this leads, let me make this point. This leads to verse 3, given for a principle with promise adapted to the capacity of the weak and the weakest of all saints.
Right.
So we know that some people can go in, have a glass of wine and move on and be fine. Right. Mm-hmm. Other people can't have just one glass.
No, they got to have
more and more and more until they become intoxicated and then can't function. Right.
Right.
So that's where that gets me as well. Obviously these things are bad.
Yeah.
Right.
These were common drink. I mean, super common stuff, super common practices. Right. So it's not like it would have just immediately been turned away. This word of wisdom was for basically to basically do what you're saying. Like, let's stop all the ruckus, and these guys that are having problems, that are completely drunk all the time or completely distracted with these things. It needs to stop. We need to focus more on things of the spirit. We need to have our minds clear, things like that.
Right.
Having one glass of wine is not going to, and I'm not advocating to have a glass of wine. I'm saying back then when Joseph had that glass of wine, I promise you probably just had a glass of wine. Right. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't, let's drink the whole keg and let's roll, let's go riding in the carriage and, turn the music up. I don't know, the band in the back.
Carriage driving.
Yeah.
Probably want to take that off your mind.
So drunk. Yeah. We don't advocate for any of that. But you know what I'm saying? This whole thing is about, it's a spiritual law. Mm-hmm. I know it's physical, but ultimately it's spiritual. It's to help keep us tied to the spirit.
Well, also they use the word excess. I think that's such a key word in the understanding of that. Is every person on this earth is a case by case basis of what's going to affect who, but really excess affects all of us. And that's what we have to keep in mind.
And so it wasn't given, and the Lord did it in wisdom. The reason, obviously, this is wisdom in the Lord. If he had made it a commandment that day, it says, Joseph F. Smith said this. He said, at that time, if the word of wisdom had been given as a commandment, it would have brought every man addicted to these noxious things under condemnation. He said, so the Lord was merciful and gave them a chance to overcome before he brought them under the law. So that's what he was doing.
Which was when did it become?
You know what?
Temple recommend worthy.
Yeah. Do you have that?
It was like, I can't remember. It was a considerable amount of time.
Like it was okay.
Decades.
Yeah. I do have it here.
It was a while.
It says, although church members were not required to live the word of wisdom immediately after it was given, church leaders gradually invited the saints to more fully live the word of wisdom. During the fall General Conference of 1851, President Brigham Young proposed that all saints formally covenant to abstain from tea, coffee, tobacco, and whiskey. On October 13th, 1882, the Lord revealed to President John Taylor, that the word of wisdom was to be considered a commandment.
So that's almost 50 years.
Considered. Well, and then in 1919 is when Heber J. Grant said the observance of the word of wisdom is required for receiving a temple recommend.
Very good.
So it was placed 50 years later, and then even more time to adjust to it and adapt to it.
Yeah. So all the way to 1919.
Which is a very merciful God.
Super, super merciful. And so, it shows a lot of the character of our heavenly Father, of our Savior Jesus Christ. It shows those things. And like I say, this was something you had to ease into. This was not something you could just turn off like a switch. So
I really love, as I've matured in the gospel, my understanding of this section has become so much more personal. And I love that when I was young, I thought it meant A, B, and C, black and white, the end. And now as I've understood more and the Spirit has prompted me further, I feel there are so many things when you talk about in verse 3, principle with a promise. If you understand the principle, you will be able to navigate it better for what it means for you.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of what we see is easy to say, well, we shouldn't smoke. That's an easy one.
Right.
But there's a lot of things that are actually okay that can still become addictive for people. And I know with the LDS addiction recovery program, it includes all sorts of things that are not illegal. I know they help with eating disorders and food addictions and things like that. And I think once you understand the principle behind it, the promise comes from that for each individual case by case basis. What it means for you and me is going to be totally different. And I really love that the Spirit can say, restriction is a problem in any extremity. And that's how you need to navigate that. I think so much about our diet culture today, because I'm going to talk about that. But we have so many things where people feel they have to live in a certain extremity to achieve a certain thing. Living in extremity is unsustainable. And we know that. And I think the word of wisdom is very clear on this is a guidance. Their blessings will come from following this. And you are open to your own interpretation of what it means to you for a lot of these things that are not temple recommend questions. Yeah.
Boyd K. Packer put it this way. He said, a principle is an enduring truth, a law, a rule you can adopt to guide you in making decisions. Generally, principles are not spelled out in detail. That leaves you free to find your way with an enduring truth, a principle as your anchor. So I like that. That's why, so it's a principle with the promise. The promise is you're going to be healthy, you're going to live longer, you're going to whatever, but the principle's there. And like you say, it's not spelled out. I think so many people, I've even found myself sometimes thinking, why don't you just put it in there? Write it down, put it there so we'll know. But it's like, we shouldn't have to. Yeah. We shouldn't have to have.
Well, and then adapted to the capacity of the week.
Yeah, right.
That's great.
Yes, absolutely.
I read a lot of articles about women who no longer are able to fast in a traditional sense because of eating disorders. Adapted to the capacity of the week, you can still fast from things and have it be a sacrifice and offering for the Lord. And I think if you look at the word of wisdom like that, it changes it.
I like that interpretation there as well.
Yeah. So what are you actually sacrificing?
What else we got on here? There's a lot of good stuff.
Two things from yesterday and today. There is a quote by Elder President Uchtdorf. I don't know what he was at the time, but he gave a really great story. It's linked to the manual about watching people who, while he was in the military service, like who smoked and drank and lived a questionable lifestyle of certain things. Like, why are they running faster than me? And I feel that way every day at the gym because I'm the hardest worker in the room, but I'm certainly not the strongest, and it infuriates me. But if we simply look at run and not be weary and the type of things as physical capacity, we're going to be wrong because I'm never going to be Simone Biles. I'm never going to be Usain Bolt, right? I just don't have certain physical capacities, but I will be less weary in other situations because of following the word of wisdom.
Very good. I like that.
And in 1997, I listened to this yesterday without even, the Lord blesses you if you, this popped up into my daily scripture study. 1997, President Hinckley, his conference talk, is
this October or April?
October 1997, Look to the Future. And he quoted how important it was to observe the word of wisdom and said, not long ago, I met Dr. James E. Enstrom of the University of California at Los Angeles. He is not a member of the church. He speaks with complete objectivity. His studies indicate that actuarially speaking, Latter-day Saints live about 10 years longer than their peers. And, that's not true for everyone. Some people are going to die tomorrow and they live the word of wisdom, but it's interesting things that you can actually have a metric to measure. That's kind of cool. It's a nice boost to be like, okay, this isn't just in my head. I'm actually doing something. My run and not be weary is manifest in other ways.
You've got the spiritual, basically 5 through 17 are the kind of the do's and don'ts, recommendations and so forth, is where you get into the details of the actual word of wisdom. And then 18 through 21, kind of referencing what Heidi was mentioning there.
Mm-hmm. The destroying angel shall pass by them. That's a beautiful image.
Oh, I love it.
I love it.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Mentioned.
And it's what it does. That's, so 19, and shall find wisdom and great treasures of knowledge. You even mentioned it in the prayer this morning.
Yes, I did.
Yeah,
even hidden treasures.
I noticed that. So, you'll find wisdom, great treasures of knowledge, and even hidden treasures. And Boyd K. Packer said this. He said, I've come to know that a fundamental purpose of the word of wisdom has to do with revelation. It's all about revelation. If someone under the influence of a harmful substance can hardly listen to plain talk, how can they respond to spiritual promptings that touch their most delicate feelings? And so this is the principle, right? I mean, this is what we have is like the Lord. If there's ever been a time that the Lord needs to communicate with us through revelation, it's today. I mean, it's today. In this world. Russell M. Nelson said it. President Nelson said it. He said, if we don't have the Holy Ghost with us, basically, we're not going to make it. I mean, in those words, pretty much. Right. And it's true. We have to be able to receive revelation constantly. David A. Bednar just did him and his wife just did I was going to say podcast. What do you call it? Face-to-face thing. And he was talking about that, how does God speak to you? How do, all these things. And so it's super important. So if you're sitting here, idling away your time with these things that are just noxious, as it says, you're just really cutting yourself off from the Lord. You know what I mean? As far as like, he's not going to be able to reach you like he needs to, even if it's to the point of maybe it's, smoking doesn't really take your mind. I mean, it's not like your mind gets all messed up, but if you're constantly thinking of just that, and then it also puts you in areas with other people that does those things, it's very difficult for you then to break out your Book of Mormon amongst them and start reading and trying to receive. I mean, you're probably not going to do that. I mean, for those that are smoking and doing it, great.
More power to you. That's
more power
powerful.
to you. I mean, hey, do
push through that.
Right. Push through and do it. But you know what I'm saying? It's better not to, right? It's better not to. And the Lord's saying that too. Let's don't do that. And let's become more receptive to the Spirit, because he is constantly trying to get our attention and tell us what we need to do. So what else? Anything else? Oh, the walk and not run. Walk and not run. That's my philosophy.
Do run.
Well, that's my philosophy. Sorry. And shall run and not be weary, and shall walk and not faint. I love the thing it said in here. I can't remember where I pulled this from, but it was just saying that for those that are physically disabled to walk or run, or it says that promise still applies 100%, because guess what? Next life, you're going to be able to do those things, right? You're going to have your full capacity to do those things. So that promise is not just given to those that are already physically able to do that. You know what I mean? So I thought that was very interesting just to mention also.
Well, and I think it also, you can be mentally running and not be weary.
Exactly.
And spiritually as well. And
it's all there, man. I think
there've been many times, even recently in my life, I've been like, I've done this and this and this for my calling. I'm tired of doing church stuff. And I said it. But when I really sat down and thought, but what is giving me strength? Doing some of these things for my calling, because the Lord isn't depleting me. Yeah. He's filling me. I'm still going to be physically exhausted because I'm doing things, but he's not saying, and there's no pay for that. My pay is I wasn't as weary as I thought. I could keep going.
Well, before we move on to the next section, I do have to bring up one question about the word of wisdom.
Yes.
Caffeine.
Yeah. This is the big one. This is the one. This is that one where the principle really comes in. And
well, what did President Uchtdorf say? He loves his Diet Coke.
He loves his Diet Coke.
What is sold on BYU campus now? Coke.
I know, and it's like you get into it, and I do. I love Diet Cokes. my kids tell me all the time, you need to stop drinking, and I do.
I love Midol and pre-workout. Have you tried that?
I have not tried that. I haven't tried that.
Legal.
Yep. So
I got a surprise for y'all.
Oh my goodness.
Midol and
vape pens.
Watch out now.
Vape pens.
Y'all, have we ever been controversial on this show?
Probably. Yes.
Sure, someone has blushed.
What's up?
Oh, bang.
Got the bang.
Energy drinks.
I
got a question though. I notice a lot of guys at the gym drink that when they work out. Is it just too hard to throw the can in the garbage can? Is it just part of the can?
No, we just leave them. We just leave them.
No kidding. Because honestly, that's going to get me kicked out of the gym someday when I throw one at somebody.
So for myself, I've never had an energy drink.
Right. Well, good for you.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying, and every time I say that, I don't try to do that to put others down. Like I've never had to. Let me try it and see. No, I just don't. I mean, my Diet Cokes are enough. I mean, so I'm not like Mr. Anti. I don't drink caffeine. I do. I mean, but I just, if I drink that, man, I'm already there. You know what I'm saying? So I don't really need it. But
I don't play computer solitaire for a reason.
Yeah.
Because it's addictive to me.
Yeah.
I do not.
That's true. I really.
We can put anything under the umbrella.
I really think if I did start doing those, I think I would probably never want to stop doing them. So I'm like, I can't. I do. Well, I mean, look, I eat, Reese's cups like they're cracked. So I can't.
My homemade ones sometimes.
You know what I'm saying? So there's problems there. I just don't need another one. And so, so that's.
Well, I think that's such a personal thing too.
Right.
What things actually affect you.
That's
Ask me about my sophomore year of college grades.
Yeah.
I played a lot of computer solitaire and I was really, really good at foosball. Really, really good.
Yeah.
Not my best year for grades. So anything can fall under the addiction category.
And they did add you remember they did add some things to the word of wisdom. It was vaping.
They did, yes.
I was going to note
and what was
on
the
that.
other? What was the other thing? It was vaping and something else. Energy drink.
Yeah,
it was. I don't remember. I honestly don't.
I think my note was simply like
vaping was one. I know vaping.
You have teach the correct principle and govern yourself.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
You don't need to be commanded.
No, right. But they did list a couple of more things.
Yeah.
Vaping was one, and something
stop looking
else.
for loopholes. I guess is my thought.
Exactly. And I think that's what and the ones that the church will ever list are the obvious things. Vaping, obviously. And that was one of the things. The oh shoot, I was gonna say. Verse 4, in consequence of evils and designs which do and will exist in the hearts of conspiring men in the last days, I have warned you. Mm-hmm. I mean, is that not prevalent today? Right. The vaping kids are buying, they're flavored. They got all the different, here's tropical fruit punch.
Well, it was marketed as more healthy than actual cigarettes, but then we've had more subsequent studies that show, it's not just as addictive. It can still hurt you, cause major lung issues.
And it's geared. It's like they're gearing it towards younger people. So this is conspiring men. I really believe it.
Absolutely.
So we see that. So it's happening. So anyway, section 90.
Moving on.
So what I wanted to say with section 90, just to coincide with 89, I like the contrast of we go from, it's not really a contrast, actually, it meshes together, but you got section 89 is the temporal, get yourselves physically ready, right? Like try to rid yourself of these addictions, try to overcome these things that you may be, spending your time on or whatever that's wasted time or wasted money or anything. And here is 90, it comes in. And here we are now, we're spiritually, the spiritual side comes in for these particular men at this time. The keys of the kingdom are received, given to Sydney and Frederick, or did I say that right?
Yeah,
Frederick G. Williams. And so these guys, so this was March.
Can I jump in on here? Because my head's about to explode because I'm going where you're going.
Yeah.
Acts 10. What happens?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I know that this was after Peter and them had taken over, and
Peter has the dream. I call it the cheeseburger revelation.
Yes.
And then you can now proselyte to anybody.
Right.
And I thought, what a perfect comparison where you're going here. We have the word of wisdom in 89,
exactly,
which is not the cheeseburger revelation, but the word of wisdom revelation. And then it jumps right into keys of the kingdom.
Keys of the kingdom. Right. And now it's like, here you are.
No coincidence and the gospel of Jesus Christ.
No, I'm telling you.
That's awesome.
This is one of God's patterns, and this is what's happening.
I loved it.
And so that also goes to show that these things are not new things. Mm-hmm. The word of wisdom was not invented in 1833
to make us boring at parties.
Right. This was
Right.
done when Adam was on the earth, right? Don't take things into your body that hurt you or that will, whatever, all the way back to Peter having the dream, all these things are not brand new things. It's not like the Lord goes, this would be a good idea. Let's do this. No, it was already established, but there's times when he has to bring it to light. Sometimes he has to, sort of knock on top of our head and say, hey, let's do this. Let's not go that direction. And so anyway, but yeah, that's what to me, I saw that, 89 we're talking about, and this was in February 27th to March 8th. So this is just a couple of weeks. Yeah. And so, or not even 2 weeks, but anyway, so this is, you're going spiritual. So physically we need to get, and mentally, clear yourselves up. So now that you're able to receive these extra spiritual blessings now, now you're ready. You threw your pipes in the fire. You're refining yourself more. You're trying harder. And so here's more power, right? Here's more endowment of power.
Right.
And so that's the way it works. We keep on striving. That's our catchphrase or whatever. But it's so true. That's what our purpose is here, is to keep striving. When those guys threw their pipes in the fire, I can promise you there was still addictions there for some of them. I don't know who or what. I don't know the backstories. My
stepfather-in-law was a surgeon, but also he was 1,000,000 years old. So he smoked for a good considerable part of his life. Cultural, it was just the time period. And he said it's probably been 15 years ago. He said, if he knew he was going to die, he would start smoking again because the addiction was still there. And he hadn't smoked for years and years. Yeah. And he was a doctor. Yeah. That addiction, even if you have eschewed something, addiction is still in your brain.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
Other comment I wanted to make, 89 to 90. How many times, and this happens a lot, does the prophet say, this is what we're doing now. This is our new thing because we need to be prepared for something big and cool.
Right.
But how often is our first reaction? And I'm speaking for myself mostly. I don't want to do that because I have done things a certain way. I like this pattern. I've mastered this. Mm-hmm. So when the prophet says we're doing it this way, how many times do we recoil but there's something better in store? It's hard sometimes to be like, hold on for the better that is in store. And that's mostly a personal pep talk to myself.
Yeah.
One of the cool things that I thought was very interesting is how it mentions, and I'm going to butcher her name, Vienna Jacques.
Right. The voice on, if you listen to this, is Vienna Jacques.
Vienna Jacques. Okay, Vienna Jacques. And did you know this? So I was like, wow, Vienna Jacques. Okay, what's going on here? Why was she mentioned? What's happening? And so I look up some history on her. It says Emma Smith and Vienna Jacques are the only women who are mentioned by name in the Doctrine and Covenants. And it blew my mind. I was like, wow. Nah. I was like, wait a minute. There's other women. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is crazy. But she was a faithful saint. And you probably, do you have any backstory?
Book, Who's Who in the Doctrine and Covenants by Susan Easton Black, who is an amazing church historian.
So tell us some about Sister Jacques.
And I just, basically, she was wealthy.
Yeah.
She asked for a Book of Mormon, put it on a shelf, and then it nudged her into reading it. Like the Spirit said, you need to read this now. Yeah. She read it. She was very converted. She left everything and, well, not her cash, because the cash comes in handy later.
Right. Yeah.
She supported a lot of church causes financially. She went to the prophet and was like, look, what can I do? And as a result of her faithfulness, she's mentioned in this section saying she will always be taken care of. And she is. The more you learn about her, she was 43 when she joined. She later marries a member of the church. They go out west on a wagon train. All it says in her history is her marriage ends on the trail, which usually someone's dead, you say it. Right. So my guess is they get a divorce, which is very uncommon back then. And then it says she drove her own wagon into the valley after that, which balls to the wall.
Strong woman.
I'm thinking it said when she in her 60s or something when she did that.
She was 60 when she rode into the valley. Yeah. And she lived till 96. And she had property in Salt Lake that was promised to her because of her faithfulness, because she'd given so much money and was so faithful. And people visited her in her old age. She was milking cows and taking care of her property till the end by herself. Yeah. And I just think if you don't think there's a representative in church history for you, look at that woman.
I mean, right there.
There's things that can apply to each of us.
Let's be honest. Was there any need for any more women to be mentioned? I mean, you got Emma Smith and then you've got Sister Jacques here. I mean, it embodies
Do we not have more of her history, or is that pretty much
That-
it?
That's what I've got. Only a couple pages. I mean, there's more stuff.
She sounds like a woman that we really want to read.
Well, I think it's
read
interesting.
about
Do we need more women mentioned in the Doctrine and Covenants? I'm not the prophet or the God, so I would say yes, because I'm a woman. I want more representation. However, half of these sections in the Doctrine and Covenants are chastisement. So if the men just need to be chastised and the women don't, so be it.
She also, with her money, she was able to purchase needed land in Kirtland, including land for the temple and in Missouri on March 8th, 1833. So she bought the land for the temple in Kirtland. She bought land in Missouri. Man, let's see.
She did a ton. And she didn't think twice about it. She went to the prophet.
I think in Zion's camp, when they were stricken with cholera, she was among those that helped attend the sick. Yes. I mean, And
Joseph Smith says she petitioned the Lord many times to be of help. Like she was ready and praying. And the prophet Joseph Smith
wanted to serve.
That she wanted to serve. And so,
I mean,
I feel like half my prayers are, let me do stuff that's easy.
No, exactly.
What can I handle today?
Let me have an easy day today.
Right. I mean, back to our capacity being met, but 91.
Yes, 91. Apocrypha.
I loved this one too.
It really got me interested in wanting to read the Apocrypha.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. So the Apocrypha, right, comes from, it was included in the Greek version of the Old Testament, but not included or not part of the Hebrew version of the Old Testament. And so,
and this was in the Bible that Joseph Smith had too. Right. When he was translating from the Family Bible, it was in there. It was very common actually to have them in Bibles back then. Yep. It's basically a lot of the time in between the Old and New Testaments, I think, is what it kind of basically is. It's several books. But
well, I thought I had, because I think it applies. We in the church love an apocryphal story.
Right.
We love things
it's true.
Are potentially true. We heard it might be true. How many times have you heard a story like, I heard this story, and then there's no citation. We don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically
clearly embellished upon.
It's true.
We really lean into that. And I think this is such a great section to be like, don't be like that. We should be citing. I'm awful at remembering citations. I'm awful at quoting scripture. But he's clearly saying, I mean, look at the world we live in now that's full of fake news. Or if you understand rhetoric, you can read news articles and be like, well, the lead was buried here. The facts were buried down here. We can't be members of the church doing the same things. We can't have apocryphal stories being what are convert us, because if it has a level of untruth, disinformation, whatever you want to say, then it's not how the Lord works. He wants us to be people that can say, I know this happened here, and here's the source where this person said it. Like, I don't want to hear any more 3 Nephite stories because they cannot be right.
And those are the ones I was actually going to mention it. I was like, like the 3 Nephites, that visited so and so or did this. So we don't,
because miracles are real. They really are. But if we make everything this miraculous story that we can't say actually happened, we're doing a disservice to people.
Yeah, because there's expectations made, and it's like, probably not going to happen, so anyway.
Almost correct secondhand information is almost correct, and we're a church of truth.
Right. Bruce R. McConkie, this is what he said about it. I got the old McConkie on you. It says, to gain any real value from a study of apocryphal writings, the student must first have an extended background of gospel knowledge, a comprehensive understanding of the standard works of the church, plus the guidance of the Spirit. So if you're going to study it, you need to be on your A game. Don't. Yeah.
I think that goes to temporal things too, because there's a phenomenon called, let me look it up really quick. Oh no.
And just to give a plug, as she looks for that, John Hilton III on the Book of Mormon Central YouTube channel. Yeah. He does a great explanation of the Apocrypha, and he even gives a story that's out of one of his favorite stories from the Apocrypha, which I found fascinating. I was like, wow, I did not know that. I mean, these names, there's some names in there that you hear people, you hear certain names like, I can't remember the name now, Eleazar, is a name, and that's the one that he taught about a man named Eleazar or Eleazar. I'm not sure exactly how you say it, but I've heard of people being called, like from Ukraine and stuff. They're named after that Eleazar, or however you say it. I cannot say it, but anyway, this is why I don't read the Apocrypha. But anyway, but they say they're named after biblical figures, and I'm thinking I've never really heard some of these names. But for a lot of people, some of that was in the Apocrypha. Right. They have that part. They have those things. And so, but anyway, there's a really cool story about Eleazar that John Hilton III talks about in a little short video on Book of Mormon Central. Very interesting.
Cool.
The Gell-Mann amnesia effect, and it's described as forgetting how unreliable a source is in one area when you trust it in another. And we do that.
Yeah.
We think, well, this person said this, they must be right about that. Not
True.
so, right? We have to make sure we're doing our homework to say, I've heard this, or choosing to lean into something we already believe. We're all guilty of it. I don't like reading things that bother me, but those are the things we really need to lean into sometimes, to be like, why do I disagree with that? Where's the fact pattern? What's my source? Anyway, other thing is going to break some hearts. From May 5th of this year, the All In podcast had a guest on there called Keith Erickson, and he debunks a lot of Mormon cultural stories. Yeah. It's going to break your heart because some of them you took as truth. Yeah. But we have to stop doing that, because if there is truth, we should repeat that and we should know where it came from. But these stories where we say, like, I know the Kirtland Temple, we've heard the story over and over. They broke the china to make it sparkle.
Right.
It's not true.
Yeah.
And that's
unhelpful. Are you serious?
It's not true. I know. Broke your heart, didn't it?
Also, the elevator shaft things for the Salt Lake Temple, they said that was the elevators were already invented back then when the temple was being built. So it's not like it was a futuristic thing.
Right.
And there's a lot. And so
lot you can dissect in there to be like, because there's a lot of truth in a lot of
it probably turns from it. Most of it comes from a truth, usually, and there may have been
elaborate.
They elaborate, and they may have said that maybe air duct systems or something. I'm sure that wasn't either, but maybe it started with that, but then it turned into also the elevator shafts were this, and then they also did and it just turns into
repeat it,
and
so
it becomes
it's true, and we're doing a disservice to ourselves. So I thought, I love that it's incredibly topical to our society today.
Well,
acceptable.
I think this is a good opportunity for us to give a shout out to Rick Long.
Rick Long, man.
Sometimes we'll throw out some stories, and I think as Heidi is mentioning, and Rick, he has to do some hard searching sometimes.
Yeah. Rick Long McConkey.
That's right.
We appreciate it.
Yeah. So if you ever wondered about our source, just go to the YouTube comments.
Yeah,
he's placed our source there for us.
He's got some good stuff.
He's great.
Good stuff.
Well, there you go. Episode 84 in the books. Until next time, y'all keep on striving. And this episode is brought to you
by Bang
Energy Drinks.
By Bang and Craftsman Mowers.
Pre or post workout?
That is my midday drink.
Diet Dr. Pepper.
I drink one at lunchtime.
Yeah. Mine is about 3
So how many
o'clock.
do you drink a day?
Yeah. One.
So you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, that's different.
What?
Yes.
No.
Hold on a second.
No, listen. No, I'm not even joking. There's a guy at work that I guarantee you drinks 8 or 10 every night.
No way.